New York City, so you can resolve some of the issues there. I've heard some of the stories about how expensive it is to deal with the bureaucracy there and all the huge balance of system costs. But the price signals are still pretty good in New York City. They've come down, but it's still pretty high. It's 25-cent power at the retail level in New York City. So I mentioned it in my introduction about making sure that the incentives are structured such that the investment is chasing where the prices are the highest and not divorced from what's going on at the wholesale and retail level. So I think those opportunities are there. And as far as gas, I think the benefit is you are still going to need thermal generation on the system. I don't think anybody in the power business, and maybe we're all wrong and we'll be proved wrong in the next 20 years, but even with added storage, which is going to help a lot, is expecting that we're going to be able to get away from big central station power because of all the additional services these resources provide. And in VAR response and providing VARs and frequency response and all these other ancillaries and contingency reserves that going to, if done right, I think going to the low gas prices is not necessarily a bad thing. And finally, I think one thing to always keep in perspective too, the costs are going down, and lower customer bills means customers have more money to spend, so maybe they'll be more enthusiastic about putting a solar panel in.
Curious if any of you have experience with leasing equipment for small commercial projects, and what the financing implications of that might be.
We've done many leases, not directly for a customer with a customer credit backing the lease, but really through a PPA. And then our company enters into the lease with the bank and finances it that way. And I think in either case, the primary focus, depending on whether the host customer is actually buying the power, or if the host customer is just leasing a rooftop and the power is being purchased by the utility, ultimately the credit quality of the customer is going to become really critical in the financeability of that project. I don't know if that addresses your question, Bill, in terms of how feasible it is.
I'm wondering if any of you know anybody that's doing leasing directly to a client rather than to a PPA party, third party.
How big a system?
Half a megawatt.
Well, can I ask you, what would be your desire to enter into a lease directly as opposed to enter into a power purchase agreement?
This particular instance is in Rhode Island, where there's an opportunity for long-term contracts with the utility company, and have a client with everything needed except tax appetite. So we just need somebody with a tax appetite to jump in. And it seems like the lease structure might be the simplest way to do it.
What kind of lease? Capital lease or an operating lease?
I'm not smart enough to know, to be honest.
Would have to be an operating lease.
An operating lease?
It has to be an operating lease.
Has to be an operating lease. You need a tax equity play.
No, you don't. You just need a leasing company. And if you have, I'll talk you out. So this.
Good question.
Can you hear me?
Not working.
This is off.
So my question, there was actually a recent, this is probably for Sunrun, you do mostly residential, right? Or even small commercial. There's a recent write-up by Green Tech Media that talked about how third-party leasing or even PPAs to a large extent takes away from the actual consumer, where the money is actually, the savings that is gotten by installing solar is taken away by the people that are actually financing the project, as opposed to the people where it is actually installed in the residential home. So, coming back to originally Jennifer's question too, me as an end user, to put solar on my roof, I would rather take out a home equity loan rather than have a third party own it, and whatever savings that I'm getting, I'm giving to you rather than keeping it for myself over the long period of time. I mean, this is, I don't know if you've seen this, right?
I would suggest it's not all of the savings that you're getting, and it's, as I said earlier, I think for each individual customer, there are different scenarios that will make sense. I think the third party offering, whether it be a lease or a PPA, and Sunrun's offering, makes a lot of sense to the consumer. They save money, they don't have to put up a large upfront investment. They get a period of 20 years where their system is maintained and monitored for them, in addition to having the production of their system guaranteed. So, it comes down to preference for sure, but it's really one that is up to the consumer.
Right, but the article goes on to say that as the costs come down, the savings that I would get from a third-party ownership is considerably lower than if I obviously owned it myself, and that the business model for the third-party owners are going to go away. That was my question in terms of comment on that. Is that a possibility?
It's in our experience when we look at purchase option versus a PPA. Yes, there is a slight difference. Obviously, the PPA provider has to make some additional profits, but the difference is not huge. I think there is some, partly because the PPA providers can take the additional, at least in a residential case, can get the additional depreciation benefits, which the residential homeowner cannot. I think that may be the reason why the difference is not that big. So maybe a 5 or 10%, depending on a competitive scenario I'm talking about.
And I would also just add that the third-party market now is very competitive, and anyone who is not passing along the value to their customer isn't going to be doing well for very long.
Yes, how does having a solar system on your own home affect the value of your home? Or how would you get your house appraised and you go to sell it? Is it going to be more difficult because it's more maintenance?
Sure. There's actually been some studies and data. There is data available on